just like this. You see these areas I'm doing right here? This is a feathered wing, but I'm not actually filling the whole wing in with feathers. I'm just kind of adding hints, little accents of where feathers would technically be, you know, just the tips of them here and there, just to highlight, just to show a little bit of texture and contour to it, without actually clustering, you know, cluttering the whole entire wing up with, you know, hundreds of little tiny feathers everywhere. And you got to keep in mind too, it's the longevity. You know, the tattoo is going to be on somebody's skin forever, and as you heal, as you age, I should say, your skin, the elasticity, the surface tension, the texture, the color of your skin, everything changes as you age. And that will, you know, it's not drastic, and it takes a very long time. And honestly, by the time you're old enough to where your tattoo was changed, you know, so drastically that it doesn't even resemble the same piece you got, you're probably going to not really care about it at that point anyway. But keeping that in mind, they will have the tattoo on them for a while. And even though it might be technically possible to pull off a tattoo, say with, you know, slightly more detail than I might be recommending, you got to think a few years down the line, once it starts to soften up, you are going to lose a little bit of those very subtle things. Like, say for example, you just put a really subtle, light, just hint of shading here and there, and to show all kinds of little tiny little accent details in it. You know, 20 years down the line, those are going to lighten up and fade a little bit, and it's not really going to be there. So it's longevity. You got to just keep that in mind. You know, you want it simple, but not stupidly simple. You know, you want it to be, you know, direct. You want it to be obvious that, you know, it looks intentional. You don't want it to look like you kind of rushed it or did a half-assed job on it by underdoing the simplicity. But it's basically, you want it bold and clean and readable and not messy. Definitely not messy. Being that I didn't actually use any reference for this piece, I'm probably being critiqued by quite a few people and putting feathers in the wrong place and putting the wrong type of tail on a rooster here. But again, I'm just kind of making this up as I go along, so you'll have to bear with me here. This is my interpretation of a rooster. I guess it's not even a rooster, but close to it. Now again, what I was, I kind of touched on the line integrity before a little bit, which is the, you know, the quality and how solid and consistent your line is. You're going to notice on some spots on here where I actually don't complete my line. I start off with a bold line and then kind of just let it trail out into the skin or into the negative paper on here. And basically that also touches on the what I mentioned earlier about utilizing, you know, color or shading to bring out detail in the piece instead of the actual line work. So there's some areas where you can actually fade the line out and just fade it out into the direction where it would have finished, but it's not actually there. And then later on, when you're actually shading in or coloring in the piece, you can complete it with shading either directly on it or behind it or as a background. And again, I'll touch on that more later when I'm actually tattooing, and I'll show you what I mean. But it's not always necessary to add every last little tiny bit of detail in there again. There's definitely more than one way to go about doing things. And it's just a matter of, again, I can't stress that enough, is figuring out what works best for you. Touches. Now, the reason I'll tape this one down is so when I'm done I can just lift this up just a little bit and check and make sure all my lines are correct. And that looks about good to me, and that would be the finished product on the line drawing. And from there we will make a copy to give a nice dark black complete line work to make the stencil from, and also to resize it if necessary. And that'll be our next step.